So yes.
Yes.
Perfect. Oops. All right. So, the exam that I'm giving is the same exam that I've always given for all of my classes, and the same for the midterm as it is for the final. This sheet is given to you ahead of time that has 3 questions on it. Your goal between now and the exam next week is to answer these questions on your own time as fully as possible using your notes, the recorded lectures, the PowerPoint presentations, your assignments, everything. Okay? And you can even use part of your essays that I'm going to give back today, and someone remind me to give back the essays before we leave today. So everything you've done for me so far, you can use to prep for these questions. Now, just like the questions you answer in your textbook that have a lot of layers in them, that's the way these questions are based on. There's one main point, and there's a bunch of sub-questions that you have to answer to address the main point. You answer all 3 on your own time. You prepare all 3 on your own time at home. I will ask you to answer 2 of those questions on the day of the exam. You prepare all 3. I will choose which 2 you will answer the day of the exam. And you'll be answering it without the use of any notes or books or anything like that. Okay? So how many are you preparing when you go home?
3.
All 3. And who's doing the choosing of which you answer?
You.
Right. So how many are you preparing? 3. Now the reason I'm repeating this is because some of you, and I hope you don't do this, will guess. Which will he choose? Don't guess. Just prepare all 3 as best as you can. Questions? Prepare all 3. Okay? Answer them as fully as possible. I will read everything, so don't worry about I'm writing too much, etc. Answer the question as fully as possible, and bear in mind that you are going to be asked to write down 2 answers in an hour and 15 minutes. So that's 37.5 minutes per question. Okay? And I will tell you during the exam, you're now at the halfway point. Leave some time for the second answer, all that kind of stuff. But you should, as you prepare your notes and you're studying, make sure that you don't go down the road of answering more than I'm asking you, because you're going to run out of time. If you start giving me information I didn't ask for, even if it's correct, it's not going to give you more points. I just need answers to the questions that I'm asking. Okay? And if you're not sure where that balance is, put together an outline of your answers and email it to me. And I'll tell you, yes, this is more than enough, cut back, or you didn't answer this, you didn't answer this, you didn't answer this, etc., etc. Okay? So, let's look at this slowly and together. And whether you have it printed out in front of you or just make a note of everything that I'm saying so that you know where to go for this information in the future. Can you all see this in the back, or should I increase the size of the lettering? Make it bigger? Is it okay? Okay. So the first question is, discuss the differences between an absolute monarchy and a constitutional monarchy. Specifically, how did Louis XIV establish an absolute monarchy in France, and how did England become a constitutional monarchy? So, for this is all in the order that we covered in class. So this is going to be the first couple of lectures, okay? So for this, you'll be, let me take you to the syllabus. So remember how on September 10th online, you did some reading in the textbook, and then you did the assignment Bossuet's Political Treatise and the English Bill of Rights, okay? So that day, the assignment for Wednesday, September 10th, the assignment for Wednesday, September 10th and the 15th, both covering Chapter 19, both the readings in the Craig textbook as well as the assignments you did online, will be helpful to prepare question 1. Now, let me specifically go through what I'm asking you. Discuss the differences between an absolute monarchy and a constitutional monarchy. What am I asking? I need a definition. And the definition has to be deep. It can't be an absolute monarch is a king that has absolute power. What does that mean? The lecture said that Louis XIV did a variety of things to impose complete control over France. So make sure you make a note of that. Okay? What is a constitutional monarchy? In this case, you're talking about England. What makes a constitutional monarchy different from an absolute monarchy? What is this constitution within the constitutional monarchy we're talking about? So make a note of that in your notes. Now, once you've done that deep definition of both, specifically, how did Louis XIV establish an absolute monarchy in France, and how did England become a constitutional monarchy? In this particular case, I'm looking for the highlights. So for Louis XIV, the readings, the PowerPoint, the readings and the PowerPoint, and even your assignments, all list how Louis XIV imposed complete control over France. It deals with economics. It deals with his policies on religion. It deals with his treatment of the nobility. It deals with his ideology, the ideology of divine right monarchy, which Bossuet writes about, so you can refer to the assignment you did for me. It refers to how he used the bourgeoisie to strengthen his bureaucracy. Is that everything? I think those are the main highlights. So when you are discussing this is how Louis XIV became an absolute monarch, you need to refer to all these things. Okay? Yeah. Religion, economics, ideology, and those are the main highlights. But remember, all of these comments are being recorded, so you can always go back and you can get everything. But thank you. Ask whatever questions you want, but don't worry you're going to miss anything. Okay? How did England become a constitutional monarchy? Now, in this particular case, make a note of what I'm saying because I'm asking for something specific. The time period wherein England becomes a constitutional monarchy is long. It's almost 100 years. And there was a bunch of kings, and there was a civil war, then the king was brought back after the other king was killed, blah, blah, blah. So, you're beginning in 1603, okay? And you're going to be talking about the Stuart monarchs, S-T-U-A-R-T. These were the kings that tried to be absolute monarchs and ran into a lot of trouble with Parliament that wanted to be consulted about how things were done in England. So talk about what these conflicts were with Parliament. Also talk about the conflicts that these kings had with the Puritans. All right? The next part of that story is the English Civil War. Why did it happen? Who was fighting on which side? Who won the English Civil War? And what were the consequences? And the third phase of your question, your answer, was the Restoration period. This is when the king is brought back to England. There are still further problems between the king and Parliament. There are still religious tensions in England. And then finally, you'll be talking about the Glorious Revolution of 1688, where England finally becomes a permanent, like it is today, constitutional monarchy. And that's where the English Bill of Rights, which you read for me, also comes in handy. So, You're starting off in 1603 and talking about the Stuart kings who wanted to be absolute monarchs. You're going to talk about the English Civil War. Then you're going to talk about the Restoration period, when the king is brought back after the Civil War, and the continuing problems between king and parliament, as well as continuing religious problems in England between Protestants and Catholics. And then finally, you're going to talk about the Glorious Revolution that makes England a constitutional monarchy. So for the France part of this question, you're talking about one king who did a lot of things over many, many, many years and established absolutism. For the England part of this question, you're talking about a number of different kings who tried to be absolute monarchs, failed, fought a civil war, failed, then there was a restoration, that didn't work out, then there was a glorious revolution, and then you have a constitutional monarchy. So that is how to answer question one. Before I move on, are there any need for clarification or questions about what I'm looking for question one? Yes?
You basically said go back to chapter 19 and look over the early assignment frame.
Chapter 19 is a chapter that covers Louis XIV, the English constitutional monarchy, the Bill of Rights, the English Bill of Rights, Bossuet, the assignment you read for me. All of that is important. Yes. And the PowerPoints. Don't forget the PowerPoints that have the outline of the readings and my lecture. Yeah.
Do you suggest to go over chapter 19 and 21?
19 is the one that has everything for question one. Okay? Any other questions about question one? Okay. So let's get to question two. If question one asks you to talk about the development of strong central government, which is one of the first themes that we talked about in this class, question two asks you to talk about the development of liberty or freedom, the expectation that people had to have certain freedoms. Okay? So, let me read this out and then let me go through it piece by piece. The ideas that led to the French Revolution, meaning liberty, equality, and natural rights. And by natural rights, I mean John Locke's ideas that everybody is entitled to their life, their freedom, and the enjoyment of their property, free of government oppression. Right? Had their origins in the Scientific Revolution, the Enlightenment, and the American Revolution. Prove this statement with reference to each event above. Also, how did the French Revolution and Napoleon put these ideas into practice? Okay, so how do you answer this question? The origins of the French Revolution, the ideas that led to the French Revolution are liberty, equality, and natural rights. And I am saying that those ideas had their beginnings a little bit in the Scientific Revolution, then they expanded with the Enlightenment, then they really expanded with the American Revolution, and at that point, the French Revolution begins. Then the French Revolution happens, and the ideas of the French Revolution, liberty, equality, natural rights, are then continued by Napoleon. So, where did these ideas, excuse me, how did they get their start in the Scientific Revolution? For this, let me refer you to, where is it? Chapter 21. All of chapter 21. For question 2 on your exam, chapter 21 and 22 are going to be the basis of your textbook. Chapter 21 and 22 will be your readings to refer to for question 2 on the exam. Okay? Now, how do you answer this question? Begin with the Scientific Revolution. I am saying that the ideas of liberty, equality, and natural rights got their beginnings in the Scientific Revolution. And you have to ask yourself, first of all, who are the guys that we read about in the Scientific Revolution? And you're going to come across people like Copernicus, Galileo, Isaac Newton, Francis Bacon, and probably some other guys that I didn't do in my PowerPoint, but you read in your textbook. You have to ask yourself, what kind of freedom or liberty were these people fighting for? What did they want the freedom to do without any kind of limitation from anybody, whether it was government or church or social standards? Does anyone know offhand?
Freedom of knowledge.
What's that?
Knowledge.
Yeah, intellectual freedom. Ask any question about any scientific question or medical question or whatever, and follow the answer, follow the question all the way to the answer, and not be shut down if your answer is inconvenient or new or challenging or controversial. Shut down by the church, by the government, by whatever. Okay? Intellectual freedom. Then you move on to the enlightenment. And so pick a couple of guys from the scientific revolution and talk about their major contributions to the fight for intellectual freedom. When you get to the Enlightenment, you have a lot of other people you could refer to. You have Voltaire, you have Rousseau, you have John Locke, you have Adam Smith. And I don't know if it was mentioned in your textbook or I mentioned it in class, but you had a guy by the name of Cesare Beccaria who talked about criminal justice. All of these guys were fighting on behalf of freedoms or equality or something to improve the human race. So, what were these things? You don't have to talk about every person, but pick about 2 or 3 and say Voltaire's interest was this. He wanted the freedom of this to improve the human living condition. John Locke believed in these rights, and this is what you see where I'm going with this? Okay. Once you've taken care of the Enlightenment, you've given me some examples of people that fought for specific freedoms, tried to expand equality or the notion of natural rights. And natural rights, that's all John Locke. He's the guy who came up with that. And everybody else followed after him, or based their ideas on his ideas. Once you've done the Enlightenment, move on to the American Revolution. What freedoms were fought for in the American Revolution? What rights were fought for in the American Revolution? How did the Americans feel that their equality with the British was being harmed, and so they felt the need to fight this war and declare their independence? How did the Americans take the ideas of the Enlightenment and put them into practice? Okay? So now that you've done that, you've given me examples from the Scientific Revolution, the Enlightenment, and the American Revolution about how certain people in each period fought for the expansion of whatever freedom they were fighting for. Then you get to the French Revolution. And here I'm asking you, how did the French Revolution and Napoleon put these ideas of liberty, equality, and natural rights into practice? Now, for me, you read the French Declaration of the Rights of Man. That whole document is about liberty, equality, and natural rights. So refer to some sections, some examples from the Declaration, the French Declaration of the Rights of Man and Citizen. Okay? For Napoleon, the only thing you read for me was Napoleon's Catechism. But go back to the textbook and look at some of the ideas that he spread when he conquered Europe. Like, for instance, religious toleration. That's an idea right out of the Enlightenment, in addition to other things. So give me a couple of examples from Napoleon, how he spread the ideas of the French Revolution. Okay? So, just to repeat, in answer to question number 2, you're going to pick out a couple of examples of the thinkers from the Scientific Revolution and talk about whatever freedoms or rights they were fighting on behalf of. Then you're going to do the same thing for the Enlightenment. Then you're going to talk about the American Revolution, what freedoms or rights were being fought for. Then you'll pick a couple of examples from the French Revolution where there's proof that now people believe government must be based on protecting people's freedom, their rights, equality, etc. And how did Napoleon expand these, put these ideas into practice? And I've given you a bunch of names, some suggestions about documents to refer to. So I encourage you to go back to this recording when you start collecting your information. Now, you read for me, let me see, the English Bill of Rights, which you can use both for question 1 and question 2, because there's that bridge there between what happened in England and then the broader Enlightenment. You read for me John Locke's letter concerning toleration. You can use that. Question 2. What else is there? Did you read for me? I think that's it. I think you read John Locke, and then you read the English Bill of Rights. No, wait. From the American Revolution, did you read for me the Declaration of Independence?
Yes.
All right, so definitely use the Declaration of Independence, because there's a whole list. The back of the Declaration of Independence is an entire list of things that the Americans felt the British government were taking away from them. All right, and even the first paragraph about why the Americans are declaring their independence is critical. And remind me, did you read the U.S. Bill of Rights for me?
Mm-hmm.
You did?
Yeah.
Well, the U.S. Bill of Rights is also a very good list of, this is what the Americans felt they were fighting for. And then you've got the French Declaration of the Rights of Man. You have a lot of stuff in terms of examples of what the French Revolution was fighting for, the American Revolution was fighting for. You got the stuff on John Locke, you got the English Bill of Rights just to get you started. And then you have the textbook to fill in things like Copernicus, Galileo, Voltaire. What did they fight for? What did they achieve? Questions about number 2? Okay. Now the third question is on the American Revolution. So it would be a much more detailed answer than the very little bit that you're referring to in question number 2. David?
When you said refer to the book, you talking about the entire chapter or the pages that you assigned in the chapter?
Only the pages that I assigned. If you happen to find something else that's interesting in the rest of the chapter, then that's great. But I assigned specific pages that had to do with the scientific revolution, the Enlightenment, the American Revolution, you know, the stuff that I lectured on, the stuff that I have PowerPoints on. So only what I'm asking and only what I've assigned are you responsible for. So question number 3, discuss the American Revolution. Your answer should deal with the origins of the conflict between Britain and the American colonists, the major events that gradually increased the tension between them, and finally the events that led to war. Finally, recount the process that led to the signing of the Constitution and the Bill of Rights. So, here it's most important to take note of what I'm saying. I don't know. Let's look at the syllabus. Thank you. Remind me your name. Hakeem. Thank you for reminding me. This is the American Revolution. Chapter 22 also covers the American Revolution. Yes. Yes, it does. All right. So, discuss. All right, so how do you answer this question? Make careful note of what I'm about to say, because I'll be looking for this in your very detailed answer about the story of the beginning, middle, and after of the American Revolution. You have to start off with the 7 Years' War. Britain is bankrupt. What did Britain do to raise money in the colonies? You don't have to answer me, but answer yourself. What did Britain do to raise money in the colonies? What taxes or acts did they pass and impose on the American colonies? And be specific. It wasn't just the stamp tax. There was a couple of other ones. Then tell me, how did the Americans react to this new series of taxes? What did they do?
To Britain.
How did the Americans react to the British taxes imposed on them? And then take a step back and say, what did the British do once they faced that American resistance? Because they were still bankrupt. They had to raise money. When the British try and raise money in a new way, how did the Americans react to this new attempt at what they considered illegal taxation? And finally, the British tried one final thing to raise money on the Americans. The Americans reacted violently, destroying property in the Boston Tea Party. The British responded with some rather harsh punishment. Next thing you know, we have the Declaration of Independence and war. So in that first part of your answer that begins with the 7 Years' War, which comes to an end in, I believe, 1763, I will be looking for things like the stamp tax. I'll be looking for the Townsend duties in your answer. I'll be looking for a reference to the Boston Massacre. I'll be looking for reference to the Tea Act, T-E-A Act. I'll be looking for reference to the Boston Tea Party. I'll be looking for reference to the Intolerable Acts. I'll be looking for reference to the Continental Congress, where the Americans met and discussed how do we deal with Britain. I'll be looking for reference to the Declaration of Independence. When was it passed, etc. So dates will be important for number 3, because things happen in a particular order, and there's action and reaction. Now, once you've taken care of all that and you get to the war, you don't have to talk about, the British and the Americans fought in, I don't know, upstate Vermont and upstate New York, and there was a naval battle. I don't care about all that. What I want you then to do is, the Americans win the war. Yay. Talk briefly about what were the problems in America after independence was won. The government was weak. Why was it weak?
The American government?
The American government was weak after independence was won. So why was it weak? Why was the government weak? How was the Constitution meant to strengthen the national government? What compromises were made in order to get everybody to agree to this new system of government? And by the new system of government, I'm talking about the one we have now. Checks and balances, 3 branches of government, 2 houses of Congress, all that kind of stuff. And then finally, why was a Bill of Rights promised to the American people? Because the Bill of Rights wasn't part of the original Constitution. It was promised after the Constitution was passed and approved by the American people. So, for question 3, you are beginning in 1763, the end of the 7 Years' War. You will refer to all those attempts where the British tried to tax the Americans, and the Americans responded most of the time by simply stating, we're not paying. And there was a variety of meetings and a variety of things they did to force the British to back down. Then the British came back with other types of ways to raise money. The Americans became further frustrated and reacted in a similar fashion. Tensions kept rising, and eventually you have both the Boston Massacre, and after a few more years, the Intolerable Acts, which push America into war with Britain. After the war is over, America is independent. They have problems. Their government is too weak to function. And so they end up with a new constitution. Talk about some of the compromises made to get the Constitution approved, and why was the Bill of Rights added to the Constitution as the first 10 amendments? Why did it have to be added? So that is the detailed answer to question 3. When the American Revolution is referred to in question 2, I just need a couple of examples of the rights that were being fought for. For question 3, you're telling the story. Okay? Now, any question about question 3? Yes?
I heard when you said, I just want to be sure of the chapter for question 3, chapter 22, I think you said.
It is 22. For question 3,
Yeah.
it's 22.
Thank you.
But I think you'll notice right away, as soon as you get to the chapter, if there's the specific readings in the chapter that I have assigned in the syllabus, you'll notice right away if the information is just off. And if you can't figure it out, just send me an email. Okay? All right, so take a moment. Look at this. I'll give you the... Look at this. Look at your notes. Take a moment. See if there's anything that requires clarification, repetition, especially if you think it's a general problem and I should do it with the class. Otherwise, you could always send me an email. And like I said, you can email me the outline of your answer between now and next Monday just to see if you're on the right track. So just take a moment, look at your notes, look at this, see if there's anything that requires further discussion. I'll give you a minute or so.
Just one more thing.
Yep.
With the post-American Revolution, you basically want to know how did the government improve, what did steps they take to check
Yeah.
and balance free range of the government.
Right. What was wrong with the system of government
Okay.
after America gained its independence? Why was it so weak? Why was it so bankrupt?
Okay.
And then the Constitution, how did it strengthen the national government?
Okay.
You know, what was in the Constitution that made the new national government stronger? And then some of the compromises that allowed people to agree that this is what we want.
Okay, and with the Bill of Rights, you want to know why was it given to the people, and
Yeah.
then use the amendments as an example.
Yeah.
Okay.
The Bill of Rights, the compromises that people came up with in order that as many people as possible were happy with this new system of government,
Right.
one of those compromises was, if you're afraid about individual rights, we'll give you a Bill of Rights. So make that part of your conversation. That there's a lot of discussions, a lot of compromises were reached, like the 2 houses of Congress that we have today. That was a compromise to satisfy big states and small states. The Bill of Rights was another compromise with voters to make them feel better about voting for this new system of government. Make sure this is all in your answer. Okay? So, take a moment, look at your notes, look at the questions, let me know if there's anything that requires clarification, repetition, whatever. Anything you'd like me to repeat, clarify, go over? All right. So, some basics. This prep sheet is online on Blackboard under course documents. Okay? It'll be there until the midterm exam. You will prepare all 3 questions on the prep sheet. using everything you've done for me, including the recorded lectures, assignments, the essay, readings, blog posts, all of it is useful. You will answer all three. I will choose on the day of the exam which two I want you to answer, and then you will just write out your answer in long form sentences. It'll be in-class essays, but they won't be graded for grammar or anything like that, just content and clarity. Okay? The exam is next Monday. It is the full class period, an hour and 15 minutes. Make sure to strategize when you're preparing that you answer the question fully, but you leave yourself enough time to answer 2 questions. Okay? So, yes.
When we have the test, do you want us to format it like we do in the blogs, or do you want it in an essay like